Turn with me to the book of Genesis, 9th chapter, 18th verse. Pray my strength in the Lord. I left my glasses that I don't need in my office. I wear them to sympathize with those of you whose eyes don't focus like they used to. So I'm going to pretend like I'm straining to see this. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of the wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his younger son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend the territory of Japheth. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave." Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. The scripture, as it is written, may once again the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of his most holy word. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord and each other. This morning I want to use as a subject for the next little while, when blessings turn to curse. When blessings turn to curse. There is an old saying, sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is to have a run of luck. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is to have a run of luck. Howard Thurman said in one place, "Nothing spoils like success." James Cleveland once wrote a song entitled "Don't Forget," and in it he asked the question, he says, when you get a little money, get on your feet. Why do we change? I used to hear my grandmother and her generation of folks simply say that sometimes folks just start smelling themselves. I never knew quite what they meant until I lived a little while. Sometimes it's the success that you get and the blessing that you pray for when it comes to pass can become your burden. We see a case in point here when we look at the story of the man Noah, who allowed a time of blessing to turn to a time of cursing. Now, to put the text into context, we see Noah against the backdrop of the post-flood narrative on the unfolding of the human story. Now, when we look at the book of Genesis, which means beginning, it is one of the what biblical historians have called the 5 books of Moses. Some people tried to say that Moses wrote these 5 books, but We know that that didn't happen because Moses' own death is recorded in the book. And if you can record your own death and still die, you're good. But the Pentateuch, meaning five, the 5 books of the law, the 5 books of Moses consisting of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, were written by 4 different authors whose works are intersped and intertwined throughout these books. The latter book, the book of Deuteronomy, has a single author written by someone we call the Deuteronomist. This unknown writer wrote this book that, if you see it written in the book of Chronicles, was found in the temple by King Josiah in the 6th century BC and became the basis of Josiah's reforms. The book of Deuteronomy literally called the Deuteronomion Touto, which means second law. It records Moses speaking to the children of those that he brought out of Egypt as he himself is about to ascend up the peaks of Mount Pisgah and disappear into the midst and the fog of the mountain of God, while Joshua would take the mantle and carry them cross into the promised land. But Moses challenges this second generation out of Egypt to do better than their parents who rebelled 40 years earlier at Kadesh Barnea, to be faithful to God so that God could bring things to pass in their lives. And so it is, Deuteronomy is the word of God to the second generation to carry on what God started in their parents' time. That then leaves the former 4 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, that were written by the other 3 writers of the Pentateuch. Collectively, we refer to them as JEPD, the initials of each one of them's name: the Yahwist, the Elohist, the Priestly, and the Deuteronomist. The Priestly, the Elohist, and the Yahwist were the other 3 writers who wrote the balance of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. For instance, Genesis 1:1. This is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form or void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. That was written by a fellow we call the Priestly writer. It is actually the later writings of the 4 authors, even though sequentially his writings are listed first. Historically, chronologically, he actually lived later than them. His account of creation goes from Genesis 1:1 down to Genesis 2:3. Strangely enough, if you ever read curiously and inquisitively, you notice in chapter 2 and 4, it says this is the record of the heavens and the earth when they are created, and then begins to tell a second account of creation. That was written by a fella that we're interested in today, a fella called the Yahwist. Someone say the Yahwist. The Yahwist we know to be some unnamed Jewish writer who was part of the exiled community in the 6th century BC, transported from Jerusalem across the Arab desert by the bayous and the rivers of Babylon. Hearing the Babylonian creation myth called the Enuma Elish, all the pagan accounts of creation, and begs to differ and gives his a counter account of how things got started. The book of Genesis means beginnings. The Yahwist writer, 6th century BC, wants to give you an account of how the world was created from his pre-scientific ancient man's perspective, how the world was created, how mankind came to be, how the human family unfolded, spread throughout the continents of the earth, all the way down to where the 12 sons of Jacob are settled in the land of Egypt. He literally divides his witness in chapters 2, verse 4, over to chapter 5, we get an account from Adam, from creation in Adam, down to Noah. Noah is introduced in chapter 5th chapter in the 29th verse. Then chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 take you from Noah on the threshold of Abraham, who's introduced in chapter chapter 12. And then from chapter 12 to chapter 50 in the balance of Genesis, it is telling you about Abraham and his wanderings. He is the father of the faith, the first uniquely constrained to the will of God in covenant. His son Isaac, and then Isaac his son Jacob, and the 12 sons of Jacob, which become the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel, who then find their way down into Egypt and have favorable conditions under a Pharaoh who favors the children of Israel because he loved Joseph. And then the curtain falls on Genesis. Exodus picks up from there with a new Pharaoh administration who does not know Joseph, and things change. It's amazing how your socio-political circumstances can change depending on who's in power. That's a whole nother sermon. The Yahwist writer, one of 4 writers within the Pentateuch, he's concerned with getting us from Adam to Noah, chapters 2 through 5, from Noah to Abraham, chapters 5, 10, 11, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and then from Abraham down to the children of Israel down in Egypt. Putting that back in context, we see Noah introduced chapter 5, verse 29, when it says Noah, whose name literally meant comforter. It says he comforted them through his labor and much pain and suffering from the earth as he toiled from the ground that had been cursed. He's talking about the ground that was cursed in Genesis when sin crept into the garden. And then all of a sudden that paradise was transformed because the sin that was in the hearts of people seemed to have leaped into the entire created order, infected nature itself. All of a sudden the mist that went up from the garden allowed them to pick their breakfast from the tree without labor. All of a sudden there were thorns that came with the rose, and there were weeds that came with the grass, and there were bugs that came with the birds, and the ground became stingy in its yield. Noah was a farmer who eked out a living from a stingy earth. Noah was a man who comforted, who provided for his family through much labor and painful toil behind a plow, maybe pulled by a mule, trying to break stubborn ground, trying to lay seed, browbeaten by the Mediterranean sun, and then trying to turn the soil and praying for rain so that there wouldn't be drought, all to get a pittance of a yield. So much sweat equity just to get a pittance of a yield. He had to scratch out a living. He lived from paycheck to paycheck, from hand to foot, robbing Peter to pay Paul, barely making it by. He scratched out a living from a ground that seemed to test his mettle, test his character, test his patience, test his faith. Just providing for his family in itself was a leap of faith. I bet somebody in here knows what I'm talking about, where it seems like just putting food on the table, keeping a roof over your head, buying the basic necessities of life. We ain't talking about accessories. We're talking about necessities in itself is a test of your mettle, a test of your character, requires a leap of faith. This is what Noah was. He comforted, he provided for his family, eking out a living from a stingy earth that stubbornly gave up but a pittance of a yield. And yet he went about his task with such diligence, such faithfulness, such godliness that the Bible says that God called him blameless. Now, that's important because the general indictment on humans' behavior by chapter 6, it says that all the thoughts of mankind were only evil all the day continually. God got sick and tired of this one creature, of all that he had made, that was unique like him in that it had free will, and consistently abused their free will to always exert themselves right at the point of God's prohibition. Seemed that there was a rebel impulse in man. Don't eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and the day that you do, you shall surely die. And right, where did they reach? They reached right for the tree of knowledge. They seem to like forbidden fruit rather than clear waters and green pasture. They seem to gravitate toward the things that were most destructive. All the thoughts, not some, all the thoughts. The problem was endemic and pandemic. It was not only was everywhere, it seemed to be on the hard drive of this creature, to the point that the very God that created them regretted that he had made them. There's something fundamentally sick, wicked, and evil about humanity. Look at the person to the right of you. That person has a problem. They are fundamentally sick, wicked, and evil. They got a sin is on their hard drive. Don't say nothing, just look at them. Look at the person on the left of you. They got a problem too. Let that tell them, you look like you got, no, don't say that to them, but something about humanity. Paul would say in the New Testament that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The prophet Isaiah would say in the 8th century, he said, all we like sheep have gone astray. All have sinned and fall. Everyone has gone their own way. Something about humanity just fundamentally evil and wicked, always leaning contrary to what the revealed and expressed will of God is, to the point where by the 6th chapter, just 6 chapters into the unfolding of God's plan of creation, human beings have gotten on God's last nerve. God says, I regret. King James says he repented that he even made man in the first. He's embarrassed that the creature that bears his own image is the only one breaking the rules. The bears hibernate on time every winter. The geese fly south every winter. They don't ever get together, have no meeting, and decide they're going to stay up north and see what happens in the cold weather. Oh, but man, always coming up with something. There is a way that seemeth right to a man, but the ends thereof are the ways of death. But it seemed right. God said, I'm sick and tired of this one creature that bears my name. Should be the closest to me, uniquely endowed with the capacity to fellowship with me. And that's the only thing that defies my will. And I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean up what done got messed up. Start all over again. But God, even in his wrath and judgment, he always spares a remnant. He always takes a little bit of what was to start over with. It's like making gravy. You just need a little stock. I got any cooks in the house? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not talking to you. Then take a little stock, and you can make a whole big pot of gravy with just a little stock from something else. And Noah was the one man, the exception to the rule. Here is this farmer eking out, barely making it, scratching out a living at the bottom of the barrel, scraping the bottom of the barrel to make it, but did it in such a way it caught God's notice. And God said, I'm gonna make he and his family a remnant. He lifted Noah and his wife and put them in an ark, sent 40 days of torrential rain, and wiped the world clean. And they stayed in that ark until the waters abated, till the waters went back. And then when we get into chapter 9, Noah and his family are disembarking from the ark. They're coming out. And it said, and Noah planted a vineyard. Now, most of us looking at that today, that don't mean nothing to us at all. That's only because you don't have the eyes to see what's really going on. See, I've learned that musicians can hear stuff. They can hear discord that goes right over the head of non-trained musicians. Doctors can see symptoms when y'all think somebody's perfectly healthy because they're looking at it with different eyes. And old folks used to say, all crows' eyes ain't closed. Sometimes, help me somebody, sometimes you just got eyes to see stuff that other folk can't see, and you got ears to hear stuff that other folk can't hear. Well, when we look at it with a trained eye, that's the sentence that blows up the text that caught the notice of the ancient people who first received this manuscript. Noah planted a vineyard. What's the big deal about that? I'm glad you asked, Terry. The big deal about that is that this is the first time in the Bible where we see a vineyard. Noah is presented here post-flood as an inventor class.
He has literally invented a new plant. He's still a farmer. He's still providing for himself and his family out of the yield of the ground. But he's created a new plant, which would become the noblest of all plants. The vine, because the vine produced the grape, and with the grape you produce the wine, and the wine would become the basic staple in these people's diet and economy. It produced the wine, the wine, which in the time of Jesus, even before then, for centuries, it was more sanitary than water. The wine, which became when you look in the New Testament, the greatest, Jesus' first miracles when he changed the water into wine. The wine would have all of its ritualistic and liturgical purposes, because when the wine ran out in the wedding feast at Canaan, it represented a crisis, because the wine represented their fertility. And when the man and the woman came together, people prayed that they would be blessed with many children. And the wine was to flow because the abundance of wine suggested the abundance of children that would come. I mean, what was the point? They wanted to have many children. And so when the wine ran out, they believed it was a prophetic, symbolic gesture, that an omen that this couple was doomed to be infertile. This was a crisis. They had to get the wine flowing. Jesus' mama came and said, you got to do something. We need some wine up here in this place. It was less about refreshments and more about prophecy of what's going to be the fate of this couple. The wine was important. It was the basic ingredient in the Jewish Passover. It represented the blood of the Paschal lamb pasted over the doorposts in their homes in Egypt. The wine is the basic staple in the Christian community. This is my body that was spilled for you, the blood of the new covenant. The wine was produced by the grape. The grape came from the vine. The vine was the most noble of all plants because it produced the grape, and the grape produced the wine. And with this noble of all plants, it also afforded Noah and his family a dramatic change in their socioeconomic circumstances, because there was a newfound affluence when Noah now was the producer and the seller of the wine. Oh, he still brought it out of the soil, but it had a different market value, Brother Kendrick. In 529, he was comforting his family, eking out a living behind a plow, making some cabbage and taters and yams and collards and mustards and and okra and all that other kind of stuff that you get a few pennies for in the market, barely making it. He was like the Evans family in 529, like James in Florida, and just barely making it in the projects, living from paycheck to paycheck, scratching out a living. Oh, but now in 9 and 20, they've gone from in 529 where fish was frying in the kitchen and beans was burning on the grill, and they was doing a lot of crying, trying to get up that hill. But in 920, now they living like the Jeffersons. Now they up to the big leagues, getting they turn it back. Oh, now we living as you and me, baby. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Anybody in here got a problem with being blessed to be able to afford a little more and live a little bit better, buy a different house in a different neighborhood, buy a car that you ain't got to pray over in the morning, that when you turn the key it'll start up? Anybody got a problem being able to go into a restaurant where there ain't pictures on the menu? Anybody got a problem? 529, they was the Evans family. And 920, they the Jeffersons now. 529, he was having a Jed Clampett experience. Y'all remember Jed Clampett? Oh, did I tell you about the story about a man named Jed? Poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. But then one day he had a 920 experience. He was shooting at some food. Up through the ground came a bubbling crude oil, that is. Black gold. Texas tea. First thing you know, Jed's a millionaire. 920. Poor mountaineer, Jed's a millionaire. Kinfolk said, Jed, move away from here. They said, California is the place you ought to be. So he loaded up the truck and he moved to Beverly Hills, that is. Swimming pools, movie stars. Can I get a witness up in here? He was a hillbilly, barely keeping his family fed. Now he's a hillbilly in Beverly Hills. You young people, Google Jed Clampett when you go home. You can get the reruns on Netflix. They don't even know what I'm talking about. Dramatic change, dramatic change. Oh, yeah, dramatic change. Now, Noah and his family, he has invented a new plant, and that plant has produced the grape, and the grape has produced the wine, and it said, Noah, drink some of the wine. See, sometimes the blessing, if you don't watch yourself, can become a curse. Noah drank some of the wine, and this was good wine. This was good wine. Now, I'm not talking about no Thunderbird, no Mad Dog 2020. I'm not even talking about malt liquor. This was good wine. This is Chardonnay. This is Riesling. This is Moscato. This is Zinfandel. This is Champagne. This is good. This is not gut rot. This is good wine. It's wine. Yeah. Man, yeah. Noah drank the wine, and next thing you know, Noah is drunk. It says drunk. Not tipsy. Not faded. Not took the edge off. He's drunk. Sloppy drunk. Pissy drunk. That's where my grandmama used to put it. Pissy drunk. And it's not written as a moral indictment of him being drunk as much as to convey the unexpected power of this new product. This thing had power. I mean, he had eaten the yams and the butter beans and the okra and the mustards and the collards and the turnips. Them is greens. But none of them gave him a buzz. None of them had mind and mood altering capacity. None of them had the potential to collapse your boundaries, distort your judgment, change your whole personality. This stuff this thing had power to change you, make quiet people talkative, make cold and uptight people frisky, way too frisky. Make people just distort their perception. You know, with enough wine and low enough lights, certain people started looking good. That in bright lights and sober mind looked like Frankenstein. But that wine had power. It had power to make people not even respect decent boundaries. Huh? Ever seen somebody that had too much wine and now they just all up on you? I was in Memphis last week. I told them about a guy who went on Beale Street because it was the Southern Heritage Weekend. And so went down on Beale Street, some of us who went to the convention, and so we decided to leave ecclesiastical places and go on down with and commandeer with the regular folk. And walking from joint to joint, I walked into a place where a sister was up there singing some Tina Turner songs, and folk was not just, they was dancing on the dance floor, and then they was dancing at their tables. They was dancing all around, and you know, I'm trying to, you know, I was looking for a salad, and I found out in places like Memphis, it's hard to find healthy food. And then this one fella, he had too much wine. And what he took a hold of it, taking hold of him, and he jumped on the ground on his knees, and he started hopping on his knees, and he was hopping my direction. And I said, "Stop him, Lord." He kept hopping, and next thing you know, he was right up on me, and I just kind of moved him to the side. I guess he saw the consternation on my face that he had gone afoul of my kind of social orientations. And so then he came back because I guess he wanted to apologize. Now, see, when you're sober, you know when to leave well enough alone, because he had violated my boundaries. And he made it worse when he came back. He wanted to put his arm around me and say, yo, my man, first of all, I ain't your man. And you don't touch me. I don't know you like that. And when he came and just got all on top of me, I shoved him. I suddenly went from my New Testament grace and love to the Old Testament law and judgment and retribution. And I gave him a shove that he kind of catapulted a little bit, because I was letting him know I need my 3 feet. I don't know about the rest of y'all. I'm in grace and love. As long as I get my 3 feet, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Once you get within my 3 feet, I'm a backslider in the Old Testament. I don't know you like that. Huh? Pastor, I need to talk to you. Fine, from 3 feet. I can hear you from 3 feet. Don't get all up in here, because that makes me backslide. I don't know you like. Somebody touch your neighbor and say, Pastor needs space. I need space. I'm more like Jesus when folk are at 3 feet. Once you get in here, oh, be patient with me, because God ain't through with me yet. Particularly when you get at 2 feet and 1 feet. He had too much wine. And this new product that was made from the grape, from this new vine that Noah had invented, he was not ready to steward the power that came with it. And a picture is painted of Noah in the most shameless condition that a Jewish man could be. And he was laying there buck naked on the ground. Throughout the scriptures, we know that in Jewish culture, the most shameless condition a man could be in is to be found buck naked. Jeremiah would prophesy to a disobedient Israel that when the Babylonians come, they not only would trash the gates of Israel and would take the sacred vessels, the bowls from the altar, but he said he would take your sons and daughter and he'll drag them in chains across the desert buck naked. No dignity, no honor in the shamelessness of your nakedness. He was not naked, he was naked. Somebody say naked. He was naked. He was laying there on the ground, drunk and naked. He wasn't going to remember tomorrow what he did. He was drunk and naked, laying there on the ground. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know why he took his clothes off when he took them off, but he couldn't make it to his bed. He was laying there on the ground, curled up with his bottle, butt naked. A man that was determined by God to be blameless, and now he is shameless. He went from blameless in 529 to shameless in 920. Blameless when he had a little bit, shameless when he got so much he couldn't handle it, blameless when he was next to nothing, shameless when he had money to spend, blameless when he was a nobody, shameless when he became somebody, blameless when he had just a little bit, shameless when he had options. Laying there, shameless. And while he was laying there drunk, naked, the story tells us that Ham, one of his 3 sons that came out of the ark with him, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, that Ham looked upon his father's nakedness. And it says parenthetically that he's the father of Canaan. It tells us that twice. It's trying to call our attention to Canaan, that the story is really about what's going to happen with Canaan. So it's warning you, keep your eyes on Canaan. And these are etiologies, A-E-T-I-O-L-O-G-I-E-S, etiologies. These are stories. These are the ancient people's way of making sense out of the world. Pre-scientific, don't have the benefit of carbon dating and the scientific method of inquiry, all of that. So through symbolism, myth, fable, some historical fact, all woven in there, they try to make sense. They tell stories, narratives that seem to make sense out of the world that they are living in. And this story is really trying to make sense out of what happens in chapter 10 in terms of the nations of men and who's dominant over who. This story in chapter 9 is setting up what really is laid out chronologically for us in chapter 10. And so Ham sees his father laying there in his nakedness, and he runs and tells his brothers, Shem and Japheth. Shem and Japheth, when they hear about it, it says, but a conjunction, which means there's a departure. There's a departure in the response of Shem and Japheth to their father's condition. Then was the response of Ham. He really contrasts. The Yahweh's writer is contrasting in ways that was explicit to the ancient people who first got a hold of this text. And it goes right over the head of us who read it with modern eyes, not tuned in to the nuances in the text. He's really contrasting the fact that of the immodesty of Ham versus the modesty of Shem and Japheth. What do you mean? Ham, if it was shameful for Noah to be laying there drunk and naked, it was just as shameful for Ham to sit there and stare at it. To gloat in it. The inference is that he gloated in it and then gleefully ran and enthusiastically shared the news with his brothers. Have you ever met people, they seem to gloat in other people's dishonor and mistakes and hurt and pain? They can't wait to tell some fun. And sometimes they cloak it as a testimony during the prayer meeting. Lord, pray for Sister Johnson. Her husband done left her with the lady next door. She's so sad. Keep her in your prayers. Can't wait to tell about somebody else's dishonor. Our Baptist covenant says not needlessly exposing the infirmities of others, because there's something in the soul of this creature who thinks about evil all the days continually. People say, I don't like mess. If we don't like mess, why is Scandal the #1 show on TV? Why is Can't Get Away with Murder? Why does that title just grab us? Why do we watch LA Preachers, Atlanta Housewives? We love mess. There's something about us. Our feet run swiftly to mischief. The proverb writer says that Ham stared at his father's shame, couldn't wait to tell his brothers. But his brothers, contrastingly, they were more modest. They heard what their brother said, but they wouldn't look at it. They didn't want to see daddy in that condition. Their concern was bringing back dignity and honor to the family. So they took a coat and they walked backward to cover their father, careful not to look at it. They didn't even want that image in their mind, and they covered their father. Do you know one of the words for what the blood of Jesus does means this? He's a propitiation for our sins. He's an atonement for our sins, which means his death is a substitution for our death. He is the ransom sacrifice. He delivers us from the power of the sin, which means he breaks the tempter's snare. He'll take the taste of liquor out of the mouth of the alcoholic, and he'll break the grip of the addiction on you so that you can be free. But he also is a propitiation for sin, that he comes along and he covers our shameful moments, so that, as old folks used to say, take it to the grave. I don't know about you, but I'm so glad that there's some things in my life that me and the Lord, that's just between me and God. Is there 3-4 people else in the house that's glad that some of the stuff you've done will stay between yourself and your Savior? And while there are people who want to run from house to house and share gleefully in someone else's shame, there are others in the family who simply want to do what they can to bring some honor, some order, some respect, some healing. He contrasts the immodesty of Ham with the modesty of Shem and Japheth. And then when Noah sleeps off his drunkenness, he wakes up the next morning. He don't remember what he did because of that. That wine has the power to wipe memory off the hard drive. But he says, but look at what it says, Walter. He says, but then he says, when he knew what Ham had done to him, what had he done to him? Gerhard von Rad says in his commentary on Genesis, he said he uses a literary phrase that almost always points towards some deeper and more egregious sexual violation. And while he's talking, comparing and contrasting the immodesty of Ham with the modesty of Shem and Japheth, he reflects the modesty of Shem and Japheth because he can't he suppresses the description of it and speaks of it only at a glancing blow, when by the phrase, when he saw what had been done to him. What had been done to him? I don't know, Reverend Carr. At a minimum, we know that he was given the dishonor of his son sitting there glaring at him in his shameless moment, being quite entertained by seeing Dad in such a shameless position, and then running and telling others and shattering Dad's reputation within the family. At a minimum, he gloated in Dad's undoing. Had he done anything further? I don't know. The writer can't bring himself to be more explicit. He's too modest himself. But if you've read any of the headlines, Brother Owens, we do know that every year, this time of year, as we go back to school, we hear these horror stories coming out of college campuses when there are parties in the fraternities and in the dorms when there was too much wine and folks got too drunk, and then someone wakes up in the morning, females and sometimes even males, and they can tell that something's been done to them. They can't remember who, they don't know where, and now reports trying to be made, and it's he said versus she said, and the rape kit gets involved, and bodily fluids are connected, and forensic evidence is collected. You can't half remember, but I know there's something sinister that happens when you combine too much alcohol, too much of that stuff that can collapse boundaries, cause you to lose your impulse control, distort your judgment, change your personality, and you can't half remember what you did, and you wake up the next morning, and somebody's got to tell you what you did, because you allowed yourself to be left in a shameless and vulnerable condition. Noah went to bed drunk in a shameless and vulnerable condition, and Ham did something. We don't know what it is, but when he woke up and saw what had been done to him, it said that Noah began to cursing. And he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham, which explains why certain people dominated certain people in the 10th chapter. But if you stay here phenomenologically within the psycho-emotional dynamics of the text, the man who was comforting his family, blessing his family in simpler times, 529, has mishandled his own abundance to now he's cursing his family. Curses that will go down to the 3rd and the 4th generation. The man who was called to comfort his family is now cursing his family. What you talking about, preacher? Listen, in Mark 3:27, check it out when you go home, and in Matthew 12:29, we see parallel accounts of the same saying of Jesus, which he says, how can you go into a strong man's house and plunder this house and take his treasures unless you first bind the strong man? This devil who has been trying to mess up God's creation and his plan since Genesis and worked his way in the garden as a snake and has been conniving and deceiving and undoing. He's trying now, and he took the blameless man and tried to make him a shameless man, trying to clog up the works. And if he was going to mess up the family of Noah, which would be progenitors to all the families of the earth, he had to first bind up Noah. And he got Noah bound up with wine. And when the strong man was bound up, then the devil could come in and start messing with the rest of the family. Oh, come on, help me somebody. When mama and daddy get tied up, wine, gambling, casino, whatever, now the devil can start messing with the rest of the family. And so we learn some things. We learn some things in this story about when we're blessed. It's at the moment that we're blessed, we're uniquely vulnerable to the burdens that come with those new blessings. So, Brother Kendrick, when God elevates us, and if you remember nothing about this sermon, remember this. Whenever God elevates you, and how many of you want to go higher? How many of you want to be blessed? Know that we're dealing with an enemy who can take the very blessing God gave you and turn it into a curse if you're not ready to steward the blessing. Whenever God elevates us with new blessings, we've got to be all of three things. We've got to be wiser, we got to be more disciplined, and you got to be wiser, you got to be more disciplined than we were before. And we got to be more watchful. We got to be wiser, more disciplined, and more watchful than before we had the blessing. What you talking about? Listen, when God elevates you, you got to be wiser. You got to know more when you get more. You got to know more. Turn your neighbor, tell them you got to know more when you get more. What you talking about, preacher? Listen. When you live in an apartment, the only thing you got to know is where to take the trash out to, what you can and cannot put on the wall, how much noise you can and cannot make, what day the rent check is due, and where you can and cannot park your car. That's the only thing you got to know. Huh? But when God blesses you to become a homeowner, when you get more, you got to know more. Because now you got to find out, you got to learn about roofs and gutters, whether or not you got fuses or circuit breakers. You got to know something about masonry work. If you live in a town like Buffalo, New York, you got to know something about sub pumps because of the groundwater. You got to know something about yard care and fences, and you got to know something about the structure of a home. You got to know something about the filters, and you got to know something about floor care. You got to have some liability insurance in case folk who come over your house uninvited yet still slip on your property, and you are liable for everything that happens to them, even though you didn't welcome them to come into your house in the first place. When you get more, you got to know more. When you go from riding on the bus or riding as somebody else picks you up in the morning, and somebody's picking you up in the morning, the only thing you got to know is what time to be ready. But when you're the one picking them up because you're the one with a car, you got to know something about oil changes. You got to know something about tire pressure. You got to know what them little lights on the dashboard mean, because you can't just ignore them. Lest your car break down on you. When you get more, you got to know more. Ignorance is not bliss. And sometimes we find ourselves in shameless conditions because we get more, but we don't know no more. When a hillbilly shows up in Beverly Hills still acting like a hillbilly, he ain't gonna hold on to what he's got very long. Some of us, we left the ghetto, but we took it with us wherever we went. And we created another ghetto where we go. When you get more, you gotta know more. Not only when you get more do you got to know more, but when you get more, you got to be more disciplined. Because when you get more, you've simply been provided with more opportunities to self-destruct. Oh, come here, somebody. Come here, somebody. Y'all remember about the two phenoms that became the foundation of the 1986 world champion New York Mets. It was Dwight Gooden out of Florida, Tampa, Florida, and it was Darryl Strawberry out of Los Angeles. They both hit the cement jungle of New York City when they were 18 years of age, and they put $1 million in their hand. Both of them would go on to reach stardom. Darryl Strawberry, with a 6'6" frame, was compared to Ted Williams. He was the 1988 home run king. Left-hander, threw left, hit left, go on to hit 388 home runs, would make the Hall of Fame. But he would end up with his career in the end cut short and less than what it could have been because he was bedeviled with drugs. And he got into legal problems because of his drugs and his addiction. The same would happen to Dwight Gooden, who was the 1985 National League Cy Young Award winner with a record of 21-4 and an earned run average, an ERA of 1.21. Dr. K, they called him, because of all of his strikeouts. And he too would end up repeatedly in trouble with the law because of a drug addiction, because two young boys from nowhere hit New York City and they put $1 million in their hand, and every drug dealer was waiting for him, every pole climber was waiting for him, every Klingon, every chicken head, every shorty was waiting for him. Everybody, like the proverb said that you can separate a fool from his money. When you got money, there's always a bunch of so-called friends. I call them so-called friends. People who want to help separate a fool from his money. They were not ready to steward the new blessings that they had. Johnny Manziel football, the only player in history to win the Heisman Trophy in his freshman year. When they gave it to him, I said they ruined him. Because where's he going to go from there? Never played as well in his final 2 years in college as he did his freshman year. And in the NFL, has yet to establish himself. Had to check himself into rehab because he got more, but he wasn't more disciplined. And when you get more, you've got to be more disciplined because you simply have more opportunities to self-destruct. When you're broke ain't no choices to make. When you got one suit to put on, you know what you're going to wear. But when you got a closet, when you got a wardrobe, summer clothes and winter clothes, half the time you're late to church trying to figure out how to put it together. Ah! More comes, more temptations, more opportunities to self-destruct. I know of a couple, clergy couple, a pastor. He and his wife met in college. They got along well. They didn't have much, but they were making it. And but she always had struggled with her weight, didn't like her self-image. He loved her in spite of all of that, and they didn't have much, but they were together. And as fate would have it, she met somebody who told her about good dietary plan, nutrition plan, started exercising, got herself transformed, her body got into an ideal weight, got in shape, and she went and bought her some good hair, and next thing you know, she was looking the way she wanted to look, and all of a sudden this little ugly duckling became a beautiful swan, and she started getting comments from men and looks from men and attention from men and being approached by men, and she had been elevated, and she had never had this attention before, and it got to her. Next thing you know, met a man online, took off, went out of state, left her husband and her children, because she didn't know what to do with this newfound attention. By the grace of God and the forgiveness of her husband, their marriage did survive. Oh, but the truth of the story is sometimes when we're blessed, that's when we become vulnerable. Because now you're getting stuff you didn't have before. Now you got to make choices that were not yours to make before. Now you got to figure out what to do with that money. Because now the devil's got something to work with. He got something to tempt you with. He's got some forbidden fruit to hang in your face. When you get more, you got to be more disciplined. Because you simply got more opportunities to self-destruct. But not only that, when you get more, when you're blessed, you got to be more watchful. You got to be more watchful, because the higher you go, the more you got, the more people coming after you for it. Because you got something they want. When you had that old beater that you had to anoint in the morning, you had to lay hands on it, talk in tongues, pray in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost and all the prophets, and then turn the key, praying that it would turn over. You could park that thing anywhere. You could leave the car running with the key in it, the door open. And that piece of junk was going to be right there when you came out. Have I got a witness? Oh, but now you driving a Lexus, or you driving an Acura, you driving a Mercedes, you driving a Cadillac, you driving a Range Rover. You got to be careful where you park that thing. You got to lock that thing up, put an alarm on it. And you got to have some insurance on it, because you got something that people want. Have you got a witness? And you got to be watchful. Jesus said, watch and pray. You're not into temptation, because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Because we serve a devil who's so sinister, he'll take the very blessing that God gave you to elevate you, and he'll use it as his opportunity to cause you to fall apart. He'll turn the blessing into a curse. See, the devil doesn't try to stop God from blessing you. He just tries to get you to trip over the blessing. The devil don't have to stop you from getting paid. He wants you to get paid, because when you get paid, he can play you once you got paid. He's not trying to stop you from looking good. He wants you to look good, because once you look good, he can bring some stuff your way, some lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, he can bring some stuff your way once you look good. He ain't trying to stop you from getting a good job. He wants you to get a good job so he can mess you up in that good job, and so that everybody can see you messed up in that good job. We have an enemy we have. God comes that we might have life and have it more and more abundantly, John 10:10. But in that same passage it says, but there is a thief. He comes but to kill, to destroy, and to tear down. And at the same point, with the same stuff that God's trying to give us life and have it more abundantly, the devil's trying to turn it on us so that he can kill, to destroy, and to tear down. See, what the Yahweh makes clear, Gerhard von Rad says, what is playing out in the scriptures, from Genesis to Revelation, but particularly in the Pentateuch and the writings of the Yahweh, is that there's a colossal contest going on between God and Satan over for loyalty and allegiance and sovereignty in the lives of man. Who is man going to follow? It's playing out. It's really, Paul would say, the battle's in the heavenlies. But while it's in the heavenlies, all of our lives become a stage and a theater upon which this battle between God and Satan is being played out. And it's like a game of chess. And I don't pretend to be an expert in chess, but I have learned the basic concept and the rules of chess. In chess, the game is to trap. The goal is to trap the king. And when the king is trapped by another piece, the king has to make a move. He can't ignore it. He has to make a move. He can make one of three moves. The king can capture the piece that's trying to trap it, or the king can interpose with a bishop or a queen or a rook, or the king can move to another square where he's not trapped. But the king has to make a move. If at any point the king gets trapped and simply cannot make a move, then it goes from check to checkmate, and the game is over. Game over when the king can't make a move. And throughout Scripture, the devils keep trying to trap God and trap his will, and God keeps surprising them by making another move. Oh, what you talking about? In paradise, he creates paradise and a creature made in his own image. But Satan comes in and he deceives the man and the woman and tempts them to partake of forbidden fruit and says, check. But God looks over the board, surveys his options, and God then drives the man and the woman out of the garden and takes the tree of life, transports it from the garden up into heaven so that they won't partake of the tree of life and live eternally in a garden that is no longer fit for an eternal habitation because it's now filled with weeds and thorns and thistles, and then puts a cherubim to block the east gate going back into the garden so they can't get back in there and have to live here forever in this fallen creation. And so he makes a move and gets out. Well, then God blesses the man and the woman, Adam and Eve, and they have sons, Cain and Abel. But the devil gets into the spirit of Cain, and he, in jealousy, he rises up, kills his brother Abel, and then the devil says, check. God surveys his moves, the board, and he decides to put a mark on Cain so that even though he killed his brother, folks won't kill him so that the nations of men will move on. He has a move. He gets out of it. Well, we get to the time of Noah, and the sons of men are multiplying, but the devil gets in there and gets in their minds, and all their thoughts are only evil all the day continually. And the devil says, check. God repented, even made him. Well, God surveys the board. He sees Noah. I got one blameless one. Picks him up, puts his family in an ark, takes the water and washes away everyone else, says, I'll start all over again. God had another move. But as soon as God moves, here comes the devil with a counter move. And he says, you're going to give him wine? I'm going to make him drink it. And next thing you know, Noah's drunk. And the devil says, check. Well, we see chapter 9 and 10, in spite of Noah's drunkenness, the nations are multiplied. People keep spreading out. God seems to have wiggled his way out of that one. So then, God comes along and he calls Abraham. And he says, I'm going to constrain him uniquely to my will and make a people of covenant that will go into all the earth, tell the world about my righteousness and my redemptive plan. Well, the devil gets into the works. He makes Abraham be a liar. He gets in Jacob. He makes him a trickster. He gets in the sons of Jacob. And the tribes of Israel, instead of being faithful to God, they practice the Baalism. And they put up astropoles. They build high places. Instead of being a light to the nations, they walk in the darkness of the pagans. And the devil says, check. God said this thing is getting a little too complicated. If you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself. So he turns to the right and he tells his son, I need you to go down and do a job for me. I need you to go down. Go down through 40 and 2 generations. 14 generations from Abraham to David. 14 generations from David to the going away into Babylonian exile. 14 generations from the going away into Babylonian exile until the birth of Jesus, where I hear the angels say, unto you a child is born, a son is given, the government shall be upon his shoulders, and of his government there shall be no end. And thou shalt call his name Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, and he shall save his people from their sins. Oh, but the devil don't give up that easy. You brought him down here. The devil said, I'll catch him and I'll crucify him. So he arrested him in the garden, and then he gave him a mock trial. They marched him down the Via Dolorosa. Devil put him up on that cross, drove the nails through his hands, drove the spikes through his feet, pressed the crown of thorns on his brow, even pierced him in the side. And then Jesus laid his head in the locks of his shoulder, and he died. And the devil said, check. They took his lifeless body down from the tree, laid him in Josephus' tomb, sealed the tomb, and the devil said, check, mate, game over. That's what he fought all day Friday. That's what he fought all day Saturday. That's what he fought late night Saturday. That's what he fought. But early Sunday morning, I said early and Sunday morning, God had another move. Angels descended, rolled away the stone. Out walked Jesus with all power in his hand, with a stanky leg, power in his hand, cranked it in his nay-nay. Because God always has another move. I don't know what you going through. I don't know what's got your back against the wall. I don't know what shameless deed went down in your family. All I know is that just when you think that the game is over, God has another move. Yeah. Keep on praying. Keep on fasting. Turn your prayer closet into a war room, because God always has another move. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say ah. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, you may feel trapped, but God still has another move. Come on, tell somebody. Say, friend, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I know this. Just when you think that the game is over, God still has another move. Say yeah. Say yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Yeah. God still has another move with your marriage, with your children, with your cancer, with your finances. God still has another move. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Hey. 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 Hey.
Look at somebody and say it ain't over. Come on, look at somebody and say it ain't over. It ain't over. It ain't over. Till God says it's over. It ain't over. It ain't over. It ain't over. Till God says it's over. God always. Always, 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 God always. Hey, hey, it can't get so sick. It can't get so bad. It can't be so ugly. It can't be so drunk. It can't be so nasty. That God's grace ain't sufficient. God always has a move. If you believe that, I dare you to give God a crazy praise. Give him crazy praise. Give him crazy praise. Give him crazy praise. Give him crazy praise. Hey! 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 Give him a crazy praise. Hey, hey, go our way. It ain't over. 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 Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It ain't over. We may need to be a little smarter. We may need to be a little bit more disciplined. We may need to be a little bit more watchful. But ultimately, the work that God has begun in you, He is able to complete it. And as long as we serve a risen Christ, it ain't over. Come on, somebody shout that. It ain't over. Say it again. It ain't over. It ain't over. Somebody open your mouth and say yeah. 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 I want to open the doors of the church. Y'all sing something, whatever, wherever the Lord leads you.